Yeah, cool, we're up.
Awesome, man. That's good. We'll live over here. Hey guys. Live over here.
Can you see me?
Hey guys. Yeah, you can. You're a good guy. Cool. I'm Roy, owner of the Fit Project. This is...
Hi, my name's Liam. I'm a physio down at Premier Sports Medicine, and I'm here to hang out and chat about all sorts of stuff.
Cool. So we're going to be talking this afternoon about three key aspects of, I guess, training in life. That's going to be strength training, conditioning, and running specific stuff, specifically around some...
Yeah, so we're going to do a lot around technique, sort of managing loads, and a lot around recovery, and sort of knowing what to do if you start getting a bit of a niggle, and how to address that, the best options in terms of prehab, as we'll sort of get into in a moment, and a little bit about technique as well, so just general techniques.
Cool. So Liam, when do you want to start?
Do you have any specific questions that you wanted to start with?
So in terms of strength training stuff, something we see a lot of, or hear a lot of, I should say, coming into a training space is I don't want to do a deadlift. My back hurts, or because of a back injury. So I think a good question to ask, or maybe even answer, is can I still deadlift if I've hurt my back before?
Yeah, so deadlifting is a really common exercise where people experience a lot of pain from either they have had a back injury in the past, and when they deadlift it re-aggravates it, or they've actually had the injury from the deadlift itself. And it's a really complex skill, deadlifting, so it takes a while to build the technique up, and there's a lot of places where you can go wrong along that with that technique. So the main ones that we see are mainly sort of poor pelvic control, difficulty turning the glutes on, and maintaining some core stability. It's hard to know which one of those you're going wrong in if you haven't had someone assess you and you don't know all the ins and outs of those sorts of things. So I can give you a few tips on how to, I guess, progress from having back pain and not being able to deadlift to then be able to go and deadlift. But the main thing is, if you are deadlifting and you're feeling quite a lot in the back, which is a common complaint, saying, oh, I don't feel any of my leg muscles working, I get my back really tightening up, that's an indication that something's going wrong, and let's call it quits on the deadlifts, and let's slowly try and build you back up to that point. Because really deadlifts are a great lift to first of all strengthen your legs, and also if you've had back pain in the past, certainly keep the back nice and strong, because it targets all those key muscles that you need preventing back pain. So if the main thing I see with people with deadlifts, as I said, they really struggle to try and get their glutes engaged. So when they're lifting, they'll sort of have their pelvis not in a neutral position, and they'll be just sort of rounding through the back, which means their glutes won't be turning on. So we use a lot of different cues to try and resolve that. Do you want to? Yeah, here we go. So Roy, do you want to demonstrate a poor deadlift technique? Yeah. So that's not very. We wouldn't get you deadlifting too much with that one. Yep. So what I'd get you to do, first of all, I want you to find a nice tall spine in your standing position, okay? And we'd usually train people with maybe a really light weight, so either just the bar or a really light kettlebell, and we'll start at the top, okay? So what we want to try and do is we're just going to do the hip hinge part of the movement, because with people that have that poor pelvic dissociation, or getting that rounding of the back, that's the main part they go wrong with, not getting a hip hinge. Okay, so what I'm going to get you to do, I want you to try and keep the shoulder blades drawn back through here. Try and feel your lats turning on. I can feel them turning on, very good. Okay, just keep nice and tight through here. What I want you to do is just start bringing your bum back towards the wall behind you, while allowing your legs, your hands to slide down the front of your legs, and then coming down to get to knee level. Yeah, and then on the way back up, what I want you to try and do is you're trying to keep the tension on through here still, but you want to try and tuck your tail under and squeeze through the bum to come back up. Okay, so by tucking the tail under, that's getting the pelvis to rotate in the right direction to pull back up, rather than just extending the back to try and come up. Okay, so it can also be an overextension problem as well. So did you feel your glutes turn on there, Roy?
Yep.
Yeah. So getting the glutes working, so that can be a tricky one to do from the the start, so it takes a lot of people a long time to just learn that movement that you just did, but you did really well. So what we're going to do is take it to the next point, and what I'd usually do is get people to go into a sumo position. So if you've ever sumo squatted, yeah, perfect. So you come, get you even wider, I think you're pretty tall. Yeah, really nice. And with the sumo, it's really nice because we can stay a little more upright throughout the lift. We don't need to come over as far, okay? So what you're going to do, you're just going to do that same movement we should do then. So keep the lats nice and tight. Once your hands get to knee level, so your arms will be coming down to there, then you allow the knees to bend and you come down to a squat position, okay? So from here, what we want to do is try and keep the chest up a little bit more, so allow the bum to sit down. So yeah, so you're in a bit more of a squat position here. You'll press through the heels, you'll have the weight nice and close to you. You want to think about doing a bit of a leg press here. So think about just squatting, and then the knees will straighten. From here, you get that same tuck under to finish nice and tall. Perfect.
Cool.
Very nice.
So I guess with those two variations, when would you get a person to sumo v conventional deadlift?
Yeah, so conventional would then be the next step. Once you're able to sumo and you're able to sort of get the back without any tension or pain,
yeah,
and you're getting all the glutes working, we're saying, great, you've learnt sort of the different movements we need you to learn, so you're doing really well. Now we can start with a nice light load in a conventional position, and they'll just have to learn the same sort of hip hinging. The main difference between a sumo and a conventional is with a sumo you can stay a lot more upright and have a bit more of a squat, so it doesn't require as much hip hinge.
Yeah.
But the main idea is we start with a low load just for that hip hinge, or hip hinge, sorry, just like a RDL position. From there we increase the load, make sure they still have the movement under a high load. Then we go to the sumo, increase the load again, and then what we'll do is then we go to the conventional, you take the load right back. So have it nice and light, make sure in that new skill, people can still learn the movement.
So I've been deadlifting for 6 weeks and my back still hurts. What do I do?
So
And
conventional deadlift.
I've mastered my hip hinge,
Yep.
things are firing,
Yep.
and I'm still like, my back just doesn't, not necessarily hurt, but just doesn't feel right.
Yeah. In the hip hinge, or are you doing the conventional deadlift?
Conventional.
Conventional, yeah. So what we do means that you've mastered the deadlift in this position. Okay, we then obviously go into a harder skill. So we take you more to the sumo or conventional style, but under a really light load. So there's no real work happening. Okay, it's just more about learning the skill, and we do some other sort of exercises to try and really build up the musculature around the glutes, hammies, and those sort of muscles that really need to be working really well. Because there's one thing to learn the skill, which if you've been doing it for 6 weeks, we expect that you really improve the skill aspect.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the muscle capacity there, then you're going to have to compensate with other muscles, and that's why another reason people get pain in through the back is they're not getting enough work happening through the legs.
Great.
So then we go into things like your hip thrusts, bridges, things like that, to really build up the hamstrings, glutes.
Nice.
So it's all about having the skill and also the muscle capacity to do the movement.
Yeah.
And then we'll get you deadlifting nice and heavy.
Like your numbers on the board. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So guys, if you've just joined us, just to recap, we've just been discussing sore backs from deadlifts, or maybe just sore backs from life, and then coming into a space, and then there's some deadlift in the programming, and a few little tips to troubleshoot what that looks like. First step would be, if you're still experiencing a sore back after a couple of weeks of deadlifting, either get a coach to do an assessment, or better yet, go see Liam to run through an assessment just to really nut out your biomechanics. Second step there would be look at variations on your deadlift and also the load that you're carrying through there. So maybe not going on a barbell, maybe grabbing a kettlebell to deadlift with, and also just lightening the load through there. And then the third one there would be looking or reviewing, I guess, your baseline skill sets around deadlift. So that'd be a pretty accurate summary, Liam.
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, learning the movement,
Yeah.
provide the body with the capacity to do the movement well.
Yeah.
It's a really complicated one, but when done well, it's great for actually prevention of back pain.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people out there that are doing a lot of deadlifting, thinking they're doing really well, but that's not getting the right muscles working, so they'll always feel their back quite stiff and sore afterwards, and it's not really going to correlate to them getting stronger through the right muscles. They're just going to continue to have those problems unless they regress back and get the right skill, the right muscles working.
Yeah, cool. So, let's talk about sleepy core.
Sleepy core, right?
Yeah. My core's not firing.
Your core's not working?
Yeah.
Well, the core muscles are a pretty complex muscle group, and certainly there's a lot of different beliefs around core strength. So a lot of people sort of look in the mirror and they want a nice shredded six pack, and that's what they correlate with having core strength. Okay, being able to do a lot of sit-ups or hold a plank for however many minutes. It's a bit more complicated than that. With the core muscles, we're mainly looking to control certain movements and stabilise the body. Okay, so for example, the core has to work quite hard when you're doing sort of squatting or deadlifting, but you're not actually feeling those muscles work quite hard, like when you do a sit-up. Okay, so rather than looking at your actual strength with being able to do, as I said, X amount of sit-ups, you're really looking at how well you can control different movements. And the movements that really challenge the core are more your rotational or unilateral movements. So when you're doing sort of different lunges and say feel a little bit off balance, that's sort of an indication that possibly the core muscles are a little bit sleepy, as Roy said, or they're not strong enough to cope with the load that you're putting onto them. So really, in terms of the exercise we're looking to try and progress you through with strengthening your core muscles, it's mainly around those movement control sort of exercises. So in the past, so we've got a question. Yeah.
So Jerome's just asked, what's the best way to deal with a back injury from deadlifting/squatting in the minutes/hours following?
Okay, so you've just done a heavy deadlift or a squat, and you've put the bar down, or you've actually noticed during that squat that you've got quite a lot of pain. The best things to do after that is, firstly, if you've noticed the pain starting to increase during the exercise, it's a pretty good indication that we need to have a bit of rest from that exercise, and then sort of review with the body about how it's feeling. So then going and taking a bit of time to just chill and saying, okay, is this actually injury that's now occurred in my back? Am I feeling a lot of pain, or is it just sort of muscle tightening? Okay, once you've differentiated between whether it's a tight muscle that's occurred or it's actually quite a lot of significant pain that's happened from a poor movement or a load that's too heavy, then the best thing to do is obviously we want to try and rest from exercise for the first part of that healing process, which is your 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
Okay. With back pain, it's important that we sort of try and keep things moving because you don't want to stiffen up. So we need to make sure that you're going through some nice gentle mobility exercises. Nothing that'd be really stretching out the back, just to keep things moving. So using lots of pelvic tilts and some gentle sort of arching and bending movements. Nothing too extreme, just to mainly keep the back moving. If it is still quite painful, then the best thing to do is review with your health professional, because back pain can be something that a lot of people suffer from, and it's really complicated to sort of manage it in the first stage. So once you've started resting and trying to do a little bit of gentle movement to keep things from stiffening up, then it's best to get an opinion from a health professional and to sort of see what exactly is going on, because there's a few different types of back pain and they're treated very differently. So people can have sort of nerve impingements, or they can have facet sprains, or sort of sprain of the joint, and it really depends on how long it will first take you to get back into exercise, and then also to what sort of exercise is appropriate for you. So a lot of people with back pain the best thing for them is actually to go straight into exercise, but it's a lower level and work on more that what we were talking about before, so the core control aspect of things. So doing those sort of movements at a lower load and just working on getting the right muscles working. Okay, so some of the really good exercise for core stability and maintaining back posture is sort of your bird dog positions. For anyone that done yet, Roy's gonna. I think you might be out of camera shot there, Roy.
Oh, hang on, let's do this.
So
Q3.
yeah, so let's get the legs out a little bit longer. So we want the knees underneath the hips. Yeah, very nice. Roy's got a nice long spine here, which is perfect. What I'm going to get Roy to do is slowly imagine you're tracing the fingertips on one arm and then the toes on the opposite leg along the ground. So reaching
It's a
out.
lot harder on the bench than I thought.
Yeah, and trying to reach out nice and long. So I can see Roy's getting a bit of extension through here, so a bit of arching. So what I'll get him to do is try and lift up through the belly button slightly and then try and drop this hip down a little. Yeah. So he's chosen a very hard position here on the bench. He's doing very well because it's very tricky. And then coming back in nice and slowly, and then you'd alternate sides as you go. Yeah, perfect. Trying to think about really lengthening through the spine rather than trying to lift up with the leg. Okay, should feel a bit of squeeze through the glute on the leg that's going out, and certainly a fair bit of tension through the core here. Breathing's really important with any sort of core exercise. So as the legs and the arm go out nice and long, you think about trying to exhale, and then have a pause at that point. Very nice, and then you inhale on the way back in. Very nice. Perfect.
Cool. Don't use the
Very well.
bench. Definitely do it from the ground.
It's a lot easier on the ground. You've done very well there. And then you can progress to other sorts of movements like the unilateral sort of loading movements and anything that involves a lot of sort of rotation. It's going to require a lot of oblique sort of activation.
Yep.
To perform. So that'd be when you get more into your sort of Russian twist or side planks with a twist and things like that.
Woodchopper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really important to go through those progressions as well. So when you have back pain, just like with the, if you have back pain from a squat or a deadlift, then what you do is start off at that low level, get the control of the muscles back, and then you slowly build yourself up to first higher loads, doing some unilateral rotational stuff, and then you'll sort of want to build back to power. So doing some of the dead ball throws, something that requires a lot of fast movement, or doing sort of mountain climbers, or something that involves a little bit more rotation and fast movement as well. So you need to train the body for things that it's going to have to endure when you go back to your other training. So making sure it can tolerate speed, high loads, unilateral loads, and rotation are the main ones. Yeah.
Cool. So again, in case you just tuned in, we just had a question on, I've been lifting, I've just done a squat or a deadlift and hit a massive PB, but I've walked away with some pretty significant lower back pain, and Liam's just covered off some steps to, I guess, address that pain that you're feeling. So Liam, you just want to summarise those steps again?
Yeah. So first thing is trying to have a rest from that activity. Use obviously any of your anti-inflammatories and pain reliefs to try and relieve the pain. And then main thing is to get a review by a health professional, because back pain is something that can be really varied. In terms of the recovery timeline, it's certainly for some things you really want to get onto a specific treatment plan really quickly.
Yeah.
Because it affects a lot of people, and no one should have back pain if it's managed well. But it certainly happens quite a lot because people sort of say, with my deadlifts, as we spoke about before, I always feel my back, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But it certainly shouldn't be.
Yeah.
We should be training in the gym, pain-free, and just enjoying getting stronger.
100%.
Yeah.
And then before that, guys, we just started off on the topic of the old sleepy core or core activation. So I had to run out in front just to say hi to a tradie. So Liam, just want to give a little summary of what you were talking about there as well.
Yeah. It sort of ties in really well with the back
Yeah.
pain as well. So trying to work on being able to control movements and build stability rather than doing lots of sit-ups and trying to build a six-pack to look good down at the beach.
Yep.
We want to really be able to have a lot of stability and movement control around the spine. So being able to keep the spine nice and long and keep a really good posture no matter what position you put in, whether that's a fast rotation or a heavy deadlift.
Yeah. So also on that note, six packs are built in the kitchen. So it's just as much about what you're putting into your body as what you're putting out through your body in terms of movement. So that's some strength stuff. Again, guys, we'll be summarising. We'll be putting these videos up. I'm just going to check the camera and see if we've got any more questions coming through. We've got some people checking in, which is great. Hello, thank you for joining us on your lunch break if you are. If you have any strength questions, we're just going to spend a couple more moments sort of working our way up the body, just troubleshooting some common stuff that we hear and see here at the Fit Project when we're getting people stronger and fitter. We'll be moving on to the upper body in just a second, but if you have any questions, please sing out while we're talking strength training, and we'll check that camera feed as we go. So third question and common occurrence we get as well is sort of shoulder or upper back impingements or issues. So my shoulder hurts doing this, or I did this and now my shoulder's done. Will, if you're watching, things like muscle ups and dips, etc. So let's just talk a little bit around, I guess, shoulder pain and managing shoulder pain. So I guess when you'd experience it, or common movements that set it off, and then maybe some protocols or tips on just managing it once it's happened.
So. Absolutely. So shoulder pain's a really common one in people who try and do a lot of overhead work or a lot of sort of heavy pressing work. And usually it's because the shoulder, rather than being stiff, is a little bit weak. So most people have really good shoulder movement. The shoulder doesn't need to be super flexible most of the time. Most people will be able to reach over their head if there's no load there without too much pain. So when we start adding load, they really have quite a lot of issues. So that tells us either one or two things. Either firstly, you can't control the movement well, so you're not getting the right muscles working, or those muscles just don't have enough strength. Okay, so with most shoulders, while some stretching and sort of foam rolling and things like that is appropriate, especially if it's pain from the session the day before, most of the time we're trying to get people stronger with their shoulder pain. So, because I do see a lot of people come in and they've said, I've got this shoulder pain, it won't go away anytime I do anything overhead, just I get the pain during and then after for a day or two. And I've been stretching on my pecs and been doing heaps of foam rolling everywhere, been on the spiky ball non-stop, and it's just not getting any better.
Yep.
And when we look at their strength, they just can barely lift half the load well that they're trying to lift. And so I sort of work with those sort of people really closely to try and take the loads they're lifting, so quite a lot back, regress them a fair bit, so they can try and work on that control of movement, get the right muscles functioning. So with your pressing overhead, you're really looking to try and firstly activate the muscles of the upper back and as well the upper trapezius muscle to try and assist in that shoulder blade movement as well. So when we're pressing, it should be from the arm, we should get that shoulder blade doing most of the work. Okay, it's just stability based for when you're doing any sort of upper body movement.
Can I interject there as well? So and maybe we can do this kind of thing. So just in terms of differentiating like the shoulder joint versus the shoulder blade. Again, maybe I can be the dummy because I get a lot of time people. I find people have quite a lot of difficulty distinguishing. You give them a cue like squeeze your shoulder blades together, and all of a sudden they're like this. So you have like a wing scap type deal happening. You like just squeeze things back and they just get a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely, if you can't see something, it's hard to know how to move it.
Exactly.
And you can't really see shoulder blades; they're back there somewhere.
Yeah.
And we don't really know what they do.
Yeah.
But luckily I've seen a few moves, so I can help you out with it. But the main thing is we want to create a really stable base with the shoulder blade.
Yeah.
The arm is the lever, and the base is the shoulder blade. Yeah. So we want to try and, with all your movements, whether it's a press, a chest press or a press overhead, the shoulder blade should be trying to come underneath the arm and try and create a really stable sort of base to press from. So most of the time if you're coming overhead, so Roy can demonstrate. So let's get a bad posture first, Roy. So getting in this position, and it's going to be really hard for Roy to press overhead in this position because his shoulder blade is tilting forward. If you can see from the side, the shoulder blade's coming forward. So what I'd get Roy to do first of all is before he even starts pressing, I'm going to get him to try and pump his chest out. Okay, we're going to resolve some of the upper back arching forward. And what we're going to do is try and get him to draw in through here, and also get a bit of a shrug towards the shoulders. Okay, that's going to get his shoulder blades firstly back as he reaches up into this direction, and also ready to come up as well to follow the arm underneath. Okay, so you can see his upper trap is starting to do a bit of work, which is perfect. He's got a nice flat base through the back here, so his shoulder blades are pressed against his back and coming in towards each other. And now as you press, Roy, what I want you to do is think about trying to shrug up towards the ear. Yeah, so shoulder blades are then going to come and drive underneath to try and assist with the arm coming up overhead. Yeah, and now on the way back down, we can also get a lot of issues. Yeah, but Roy does really well there, so it's a slow descent rather than a lot of people just have that shoulder blade drop straight down and then the arm slowly follows. So for most of the sort of strength training issues that you see with the shoulder, it's about retraining that shoulder blade and getting a really nice lot of stability through there and plenty of strength in through the sort of muscles of the back. So usually the first thing we get people doing is doing a lot of lat work and a lot of sort of upper back work to try and be able to draw those muscles back, and then also doing some shrugging as well. So again, the upper traps working to be able to press overhead is a really common one that we get people to do. But again, everyone's very different, so a lot of people are going to be on the total opposite end of the spectrum, and they're going to get a lot of shoulder blade movement and they're not going to have much strength through the arm. So if you're having continual problems, the best thing to do is try to get a review by a health professional. The main thing is try a bit of strengthening first at an appropriate load, and then try, if that doesn't resolve anything, then try and get a review with a health professional. They'll be able to guide you a lot better, because as I said, everyone should be able to train in the gym without pain, and there's certainly something you do to try and resolve the pain you're feeling if you are getting any of these issues.
100%.
Yeah, and with the shoulder as well, I think you need to also try and work on the power aspect that we were talking about before with the core muscles. That shoulder blade needs to be able to move quickly as well. So if you're doing sort of any of the movements that we do here, so any sort of push presses or anything where there's a fast movement overhead, any sort of snatching, things like that, you need to be able to do those movements quickly. So once you're able to control the movement, you've got a nice stable base, then try and do that quickly and build up your power through there.
And so guys too, if you're into big, ballistic, fast, heavy movements, Liam and I put together a little video series over the upcoming months, and I'm sure we'll be getting some pretty good footage of him snatching and jerking a heavy barbell overhead. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good. So we've kind of worked our way from hinge, lower back issues that are common that we see either down in the premier sports medicine or even in training spaces like the Fit Project, and we kind of worked our way up the body through again around core activation, that whole sleepy core and getting that working, and we've sort of finished up here in terms of our shoulders around the strength column of things that we wanted to talk about in terms of movement today. Again, if you have any questions or you're just tuning in, let us know, say hi, leave us a comment, and we'll get to them. I think it's a good time to move on down to talk about just general sort of conditioning training as well, because again, we think often deadlifts, squats, bench press, jerks, snatches are movements that injure us, but quite often again, we see as coaches in here anyway, just movement mechanics and stuff when we're doing a faster thing like our charge classes, or even again Liam would see it down the road, you know, someone going for like a fast run or a sprint or something, and just some injuries that are sort of common when you're doing something a little bit faster, a little bit harder, or a little bit more ballistic. Something like the kettlebell swing comes to mind here as well, that we might want to touch on, and then that'll be a nice segue down into sort of running specific stuff as well. So I don't know, what have you experienced down in the clinic when you've been down there and someone's come in?
Well, I think the main thing to sort of look at with those sort of what you're talking about there is the body usually becomes injured, or sort of you have pain in your body when you push it past the capacity that you've sort of built up. Yeah. So a lot of the time you'll see people going from doing some really low level sort of work, so just some
training once a week, or
so only getting to the gym and doing just some light resistance stuff, and then get a heap of motivation, which is great, love that. But then going and doing an hour session of hill sprints or something like that, and coming back and saying, I've got a lot of pain in through my calf, or got a lot of hamstring pain, or they've developed a tendonitis. So what we can see there is a distinct change in what the body has had to tolerate. So it's not saying that doing your hill sprints or anything like that, or that sort of session is bad, because I think that's great. It's really good for increasing performance.
Yeah.
However, you need to have the capacity, you need to build the foundations before you can go to that. We think of it a bit of a sort of pyramid, progression. Those sort of movements, the high velocity and sort of more skill-based movements, which I'd consider sprinting to be a skill-based movement, is right at the pinnacle of that. So it takes firstly coordination and a lot of speed, strength to do that sort of exercise. But first of all, you need the base levels of the pyramid. So the first level is first being able to move the body well. So that's where we're talking about your sort of core movements, being able to maintain a long spine, be able to get your glutes functioning, be able to feel your lats working, that sort of thing. So you're able to get all the muscles working properly, you're functioning really well, you move quite well, and then you need to try and build a bit of strength around that. Okay, so that's when you get into the gym, doing your higher loads, really building up a nice capacity for the muscles, so you've got a strong foundation there. And then slowly building up the speed of the movement and adding in some more skills as you go. So that's when we sort of add in sort of some of that unilateral work or some rotation into some of the movements as well. And then slowly building the loads from there to finally finish with those high velocity skill-based movements. And that's sort of other examples are sort of your Olympic lifting and kettlebell swings and things like that. So if you prepare the body well for that sort of thing, then certainly we don't expect you to have any issues when you get to that level, but you need to take each step. The issue arises when people try and skip steps, say I want to be there right now, rather than say I want to be there in 6 weeks' time, or I want to be there in 12 months' time, depending on what sort of goal that you have, and try and build through those foundations and having a really clear plan to go through that nice and slowly, and it's quite a staged stage as well. So it has everything in life you have to be patient with, and take the time and have a plan to get there. Otherwise, we do see those sort of issues happen really quickly if you do try and just jump straight ahead. Hopefully that's answered some of the questions.
It definitely has. I think as well, like the thing that was springing to mind for me was like someone who goes, I go to the gym, but I also want to go play soccer or basketball or VFL at a higher level, and they, again, like they've just been in the gym doing, like a typical sort of bro program, which is very sort of sagittal and push, pull, and lift and squats. Exactly. And then they're like, cool, now I want to go do X, and they just run out on the pitch, and then all of a sudden, they've strained the muscle, or they've
I think the most obvious way we see this is when you look at the AFL just this year. Within the last couple of weeks of the pre-season and the first rounds, we saw 4 or 5 ACL injuries. Which
let's just point as well to the hang on. So you can see
the ACL's a deep ligament to the knee, and it's the main stabilizer there. So it's a really serious one. If you rupture that or have an injury of that ACL, it takes a long time. So usually it's 12 months before they can return to sports. And with most ACL injuries, it's quite innocuous what happens. So it's a change of direction, usually not too many players around, or they're just landing after trying to catch a footy or something like that. Something they've done 1,000 times before, but for some reason at that point they get that injury, and usually it's because of that poor preparation beforehand. So that's sort of what you're talking about. Spending a lot of time over the off season in the gym doing your sort of really basic sort of stuff, not incorporating any of that sort of more, functional sort of exercise with rotation, stability, and trying to work on the skills that are involved. I'm sure at the AFL level it's a really high standard, but certainly we do see with ACL injuries, it's across the first couple of weeks of the season where we get those. It's people, again, not preparing their body for what they're about to undertake. And then we have these things happen really easily. And with the ACL, it's the one that's can put you back a long time. So it's important to, if you are playing pivoting sport, you need to not only be really strong, but you need to be able to do the skills of also pivoting, sprinting, things like that.
Which is most sports. Most sport, unless you're playing table tennis or something, but even then, like most sports.
Depends how competitive you are with your table tennis, Roy.
And then I guess, like, how important would you say, again, from a rehab perspective, doing like a really good conditioning program concurrently to strength training, because again, I think particularly in the fitness industry, it's all about like high intensity, hit. But again, the wheels can fall off there again if you're only training one modality. So I think it's very true what you're saying about having a balance and knowing what your outcome is.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to test the body out in all different ways.
Yeah.
Certainly we see if you don't have that sort of ability to perform at a high intensity, you do become more fatigued, and then the muscles are less able to stabilise the different structures of the body, whether that be an ACL or a shoulder.
Yeah.
And then you're more likely to have injury from there. So we certainly need that high intensity training, but we also need everything else as well in place. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So again, like a little recap, if you're just joining us, we've just been spending a couple of minutes talking about conditioning and how important that is to run concurrently with a good strength program. Key takeaways there is know your capacity and start sort of within your means and build up to your goal and have a good strategy building there. And also recurrent sort of things around just going too hard too soon in terms of anything, whether it's sports specific or training, is result in things like, that can result in pretty serious things to set you back, like an ACL injury or some sort of tendonitis through your joints, ankle,
absolutely.
knee, elbow, shoulder.
It doesn't really matter there's no correlation between what's an injury occurs.
Yeah.
It's more just about if you're not preparing the body well, anything can happen. It's just the weakest link in the chain falls apart. So you just need to try and think about ticking all the boxes. If you're going to play a pivoting sport, it's probably the toughest thing to prevent injuries in, because it requires so many different skills and so many different, athletic attributes. You need to sort of think about breaking down the task. What do I need to do? I need to be strong, I need to be fit, I need to be able to stabilise through the proximal sort of joints, so through your core, through your pelvis. You need to also have the skills to be able to push off, twist, turn, and everything like that. So really breaking down what you want to do, and then getting a plan in place to be able to build up across that pyramid that we talked about before, to try and get you to that goal. I think that's the best way to prevent injuries and prehab and rehab.
100%. Cool. Let's segue down into
chat about running.
More running specific. If you haven't checked out our podcast, on running, check it out. There's some really good gold in there. So let's talk. How far you've ever run?
How far have I run?
Yeah.
I've only ever run to the half marathon distance, Roy.
That's okay.
I guess sport-wise, it's never pushed me to run much further. And, just time-wise as well. But I do love running, and especially getting onto the trails as well. So pretty.
And around, because the reason we got you on the podcast was because a lot of people come to you with very running-specific injuries, or they attribute their injuries to running, which, like I said, conditioning down into running-specific stuff, and building that pyramid base and knowing capacity is really important. So, where do you most see injuries occurring when people are running?
So I guess with running, it's pretty obvious that the lower legs are going to get the most of the load. I don't see too many shoulder injuries with runners. You certainly do see it on the occasion, and that's more due to your posture, but the higher percentage of your injuries are going to be closer towards the foot. So the most common ones, I think we've spoken a little bit about before, but your plantar fasciopathy or your Achilles tendinopathy are some really common ones. You can get sort of medial tibial stress syndrome or shin splints, and then also sort of your anterior knee pain, or like your patellofemoral pain, which is a really common one in young women. We talk about that quite a lot. And then moving up towards the hips, we can get a sort of hamstrings tendinopathy as well as some anterior hip pain. So a lot of hip flexor related pain, and a lot of the injuries you'll see with running are actually not an injury per se, so they're not an inflammation of anything or a tear in anything. It's just related to an overload of a specific structure. So if you're running a certain way, or you've increased your load so much that there's too much load on any muscle or any structure of the body, it doesn't really matter what it is. Again, you're going to find you're going to have an injury occur because the body hasn't built up the capacity for what you're doing, which is long distance running. And certainly with long distance running, great thing about it, but also the challenging thing about it is a very challenging type of exercise to do, because it involves long distance and repetitive loading.
Yep.
So you need to be really strong to do that. You also need to be obviously very fit as well. So I guess the main things that I like to have a chat about running is technique and the impact of that, because I think it's an area that most people don't recognise with running.
Yeah.
Because there is a good way to run, or a more efficient way to run, and a not so efficient way to run. So you talk to a lot of people who've tried to get into running, haven't been a runner in the past, and have sort of said that it's so hard, and they can't go to the distance they think they'd be able to, just because they're fatiguing quite quickly, or it just feels really sore and stiff while you're doing the running. So there's people that don't have a great skill base for running.
Yeah.
They might be super fit, doing a lot of lifting in the gym, and they think they go out for a run, I should be able to go as far as I want. However, because of their technique, they're just starting to put a bit too much load on certain structures,
yep.
and then that can cause injury.
Yep.
Question? Sorry.
There's no questions at all.
Oh, no questions.
Yeah.
I guess my experience of what I've seen is a lot of people, I guess, have a really strong perception of what it should be to be a runner as well.
Yeah.
So trying to be able to be really efficient and take lots of steps, be really light on their feet, and trying to use your glutes and your core. So you see a lot of people sort of running like as stiff as a board,
yeah.
and trying to take super light steps, whereas it's really about trying to find that middle ground. So certainly we want to have a really fast step rate or a high cadence, but a lot of people have sort of gone and read a lot of blogs, or have talked to their mates who've had a running injury in the past,
yeah.
and they've tried to convert to a certain type of technique too quickly, or too much for that type of body, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So again, it's about trying to have a bit of a middle ground. So we need to find what's best for you, what's most efficient for your body, and that's why usually you need to see someone run, do a bit of video analysis, and see what the best way for that person to run is. Because I think we talked about in the podcast previously, a large majority of people are actually overstriders. So from a sprinting background, or they've come from doing some pivoting sports, which requires a lot of sprinting. And with sprinting, you're going to get a lot longer strides, and the foot's going to land out a long way in front of the body. So that's carried over to when they've done their long distance running. They try to run like a bit of a sprinter, and that's why they get their foot coming out a long way.
Yep.
Whereas that's not the most efficient way for long distance running. Really trying to look at being as efficient as possible, and that can make a huge difference to when we get people running, and whether they have injury or not. If you can reduce the amount of load going onto the leg, you're obviously going to have a lot less injuries.
Yep.
There.
So what about so we talked strength and conditioning so far, good running specific exercises to do in training space, what would you recommend? Let's do like 2 or 3 prehab type vibes, so like injury prevention. So you're coming in, you just start a running program, and you want to avoid any sort of tendinopathy or anything happening, or tight stressed hips and stuff. What are your exercises you prescribe?
Yeah, so in terms of your prehab or preparing the body for running, the main ones we want to target is around the foot. So trying to really load up the calves. I think the calves are probably the most important muscle in the body. I think we've definitely had a chat about this before.
Yeah.
I do love a calf raise, because it's really important. Around 8 times your body weight gets put through that calf muscle on each step, which is really
when you're running, when you walk.
When you're running.
When you're running.
Yeah. So, and that's long distance running.
Yeah.
The faster you run, obviously, the more weight that's going to be put through that muscle. So 8 times your body weight's huge, and that's why.
Especially when you're 93 kilos.
Yeah. And what we want to try and do is take as much weight as you can through the calf muscle, because it's really efficient at taking weight. So if we start not having enough strength through the calf, then somewhere else is going to have to take up that that load.
Yep.
And that's when you can start having a lot of knee problems and a lot of hip problems.
Yep.
So
we've got calf raises.
Number one. And with the calf raises, trying to get to bent and straight knees as well. So trying to target the two different muscles of the calf. So we have the lower, deeper soleus as well as the gastroc. There's one on top that you might see all the guys training at the gym. Second one, the main one to try and look for that's closest to the body would be the glute medius muscle.
There it is.
So this is really good for hip stability and trying to maintain a lot of posture while you're running. So see some people that don't have great glute medius strength or pelvic control, you'll sort of see them sort of shuffling down the street.
Sway.
Yeah, get a bit of a funky running style.
Yep.
They're sort of poking the bum out as they go.
Yep.
And that's usually because they don't have great stability through the sides of their hips. So the main one for me that I love getting people to do is, two if that's right, Roy.
Oh, okay, yeah, let's do two. Let's do two.
So number one would be if you get yourself a resistance band, wrap it around the outsides of your outside foot. You're going to be standing on the opposite leg. And you're going to come out. So this is a standing hip abduction. The TheraBand around the foot that's coming out to the side. So here you're trying to hitch the hip, keep this nice and still as you lift the other leg, and it should actually work the leg on the ground. That's where all the work should be occurring, and you should feel that right into the bum.
Good.
The second one would be a side lying leg lift. So again,
which we've been doing a lot recently.
So and that'd be, you can progress that by going into a side plank. Okay, so coming, lifting the hips off the ground, having to take the whole load of the body, and then lifting the leg off from there. Another point I'd like to make is also with running, again, it's a faster sort of exercise. We talked about last time, building strength is the first foundation. What we need to do is build power as well, build speed. So once you can do those exercises well, they're not feeling too challenging, adding a bit of speed. So with the calf raises, you can go at a tempo, so go up fast, slow down sort of thing, or adding in some hopping is a good way to build power through the calf. Or also with the standing abductions, again, out fast and slow. And it's with the, you can do the same with the planks as well. They're a really challenging one. If you can do that well, I'll be very impressed.
Of course, that's one, two, that's three, right?
That's about four at the end.
Four total. So again, guys, really good running exercises to incorporate into your training if you're not already or not following any programming we have here at the Fit Project. I know head coach Jerome loves picking Liam's brain, and then those sort of ideas start trickling through in our programming. 4 key exercises to do would be start off with things like calf raises, and then again, we'll go through all the exercises. So calf raises, then we have your hip abduction with a TheraBand. Then you go into a lying, lying leg abduction?
So you can side lying leg abduction if you want to challenge yourself, going into a side plank with a leg abduction.
And your last one was the
building power, so trying to do those with a bit of pace.
So playing around with some tempo there, or adjusting the TheraBands you're using would be a really good way to go to build that running base. So we're coming up to an hour. So again, Liam's going to be back on our podcast down the line, because he actually our longest podcast ever when we started sitting down talking about running. We still got to talk about the barefoot thing, but that might be time for another video. But again, Liam and I are going to be working together over the coming months, shooting some pretty cool little tutorials and doing live videos like this just to troubleshoot anything. So if you have any questions around prehab, rehab, how to train, coming back to training from an injury, drop us a line either via the channel that you're watching, so Instagram or Facebook, or send us a line direct to support@thefitproject.net.au, or straight to Liam, and you can book in for an assessment. They're really well set up down at Premier Sports and Spinal to assess a lot of things like running gait, muscles firing, things like that. So his email is Liam at
Liam Crowley at premiersportsmedicine.com.au,
or Google him.
Absolutely. And just send me an email, introduce yourself, and let me know what your issue is, and we'll have a good chat about things.
Cool, ace guys. So thanks for tuning in. Probably during your lunch break, then we're going to sit down. We're going to brainstorm a couple ideas, and we're going to start putting together some pretty cool little exercise tutorials in and around better strength training, better conditioning and better running feel. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Perfect.
Thanks, dude.
It was lovely to be here.
Awesome.